everyone, welcome to Professor Orthodontics, your online classroom to understanding orthodontics in simpler terms. Today's session will be a continuation of orthodontic implants introduction, which we have already covered in the last session. So let's get started. As you know, this is the second session on the introduction to orthodontic implants. There will be only one more session on the introduction to orthodontic implants. From now on, I'll be referring to orthodontic implants as TADs because we'll be studying that in detail than any other type of orthodontic implants. So what do we learn today? Today we learn about the classification of orthodontic implants and particularly TADs, which kind of TADs are more commonly used today in orthodontics, and what's the difference between osteoconduction and osteoinduction. And I'm trying to keep this session short, so I've not covered the dimensions, the length and the width of orthodontic implants, and we'll be covering that in the next session. So this is the same picture which we used in the earlier session. You can see a screw type of orthodontic implant in the hands of this person, and yes, you can appreciate the fineness and the small size of the orthodontic implant and different parts of orthodontic implant. Like last time, we have to remember that orthodontic implants are very different from prosthodontic implants, and in this picture you can clearly see that the orthodontic implants are finer and more delicate. The prosthodontic implants are more bulkier, and this is done so that it resembles the natural root of teeth, because that's the main purpose of prosthodontic implants, to to replace natural teeth. So that's the reason why the roots are bulkier and usually cylindrical shape. In the previous session, we already covered this topic, but just to concentrate more on the phenomena of osseous integration, I'm mentioning this subject today. So we know that bio-osseous integration is nothing but unification between two things, the living and the non-living. The non-living is the implant surface, whether it is prosthodontic and orthodontic implant. It does not matter, irrespective of the type of implant. The unification between the implant surface, which is the non-living surface here, and the living surface, which includes the histological, the soft tissues, the bone, the cortical bone, the cancellous bone, the gingiva, attached gingiva, and how the both of them, the living and the non-living, interact with each other. That decides the success or failure of an implant. Even in case of an orthodontic implant, although yes, we don't need a bio-osseous integration essentially for the orthodontic implant to succeed, but yes, it does enhance the stability of the implant, and we'll be discussing that in the next session. Coming back to bio-osseous integration, there are two words that come into play when we discuss bio-osseous integration. First is osteoinduction and osteoconduction. So what are these two things? When you say a material is undergoing tissues are undergoing osteoinduction, you're basically saying that some amount of stimulation has taken place, usually some kind of trauma or any kind of stimulation. Even a surgical procedure, it is an intentional trauma for the benefit of the person, for the benefit of the patient who is receiving the implant. So even that placement of the implant acts as an accelerator factor. What happens is it stimulates the production of bone morphogenetic proteins. Now these proteins have the ability to undergo metamorphosis. They change their form and they give rise to growth factors. They stimulate the release of growth factors. Growth factor 3. What happens is, because of these growth factor 3, new osteoblasts are stimulated, and more osteoblasts are produced, and they are stimulated to cause production of bone, deposition of bone. So this is how any kind of trauma, any kind of implant placement by itself is a kind of a trauma. So this surgical intervention results in stimulation of and production of bone growing factors, and increases production of osteoblasts that in turn deposit bone. And that's how the healing takes place between the implant and the bone surface. Next comes osteoconduction. So what happens in case of osteoconduction is, basically we are talking about the non-living side of the bio-osseous integration. So the non-living side is the implant surface. What happens on the osteoconduction side? So on the implant surface, what happens is it forms a fertile land on which the bone can deposit. So that's osteoconduction. Growth of bone on that implant surface, on that non-living surface, is osteoconduction. How can you increase the osteoconductive ability of an implant? You can acid etch the implant surface. In the sense, these manufacturers usually provide implants which are acid etched to increase osteoconduction. Another thing that is usually done is uh, uh, plasma coated implant surfaces are used, and even these manufacturers claim that this increases the osteoconductive ability of the implant. So when osteoconduction, we are only concerned with the living tissues. In osteoinduction, it's only concerned with the living tissues. Osteoconduction is mainly concerned with the implant surface, and both osteoinduction and osteoconduction together result in bioosseous integration, in the sense complete unification between the bone formation, the newly formed bone, and the exposed implant surface. So when the two unite biochemically and biochemical level without formation of any fibrous tissue in between, they should completely unite and there should be nothing separating them in between at histologic level and at biochemical level. That's when you say an implant is osseous integrated. Coming to this now, we know that when not all materials have the ability to stimulate this bioconduction or osteoconduction, and high quality, there are different grades of stainless steel and titanium. They have the ability to stimulate osteoconduction, and stainless steel and titanium are most commonly used. Particularly titanium is used first of all to make sure that you can use your material is safe to use in as an implant, both as prosthodontic and as orthodontic. It's usually it should be biocompatible. So that's the reason why these three materials have been tested. They have been tried and tested for many years, and they have been proven safe. Of the three, the titanium form, the pure titanium form, is most frequently used, and to this date, these are available in for both orthodontic as well as prosthodontic implants. Now, again, titanium has different grades: titanium 1, 2, 3, 4, based on the purity of the titanium. Yeah, so in this picture, we see different kinds of orthodontic implants. On the upper left, we can notice this is a very old kind of orthodontic implant, so it has a very smooth surface, and no, it's not used anymore. And then you've got two other orthodontic implants. Then again, the second one, the middle one, the top middle one, is not used much. The one on the right is the kind that is which has sharp flutes. So these kinds are the screw kind of implants, orthodontic implants, which are more commonly used these days. The lower one is the plate type of orthodontic implants. We can see that the plate has holes and it has a head. The body has holes. This is for the placement of screws to hold this orthodontic implant in place. So this is the coming from the upper to the lower. On the top, all you see are screw type of implants. In the lowermost, what you can see is a plate type of orthodontic implant. Now, where are they used? The screw type of implants are most frequently used today in orthodontics, but then the lower one is the plate type of implant. Now, plate type of implant is used for closed implants. Now, we'll discuss that in the coming slides. So just to brush again, on the left side we see picture A, which is endosseous implant, and most prosthodontic and orthodontic implant come under this category. In the center we have picture B, which refers to the subperiosteal implant. Why subperiosteal? Because it is under the periosteum layer. It's also called as on plant. Why is it called on plant? Because it's placed right on the bone. So it's under the periosteum, but it is not going through the bone. That's the reason why it has got these two names, on plant and subperiosteal implants. And orthodontic as well as prosthodontic implants are available under this category, picture B. The picture C refers to transosseous implants. The name itself suggests it goes through and through the bone. As you can see, it's entering the bone from one side and it is revealing itself in the oral cavity on the other side. But then it is an extensive procedure, surgical procedure, and this kind of implants are not at all available in orthodontic practice. But yes, to some extent, some prosthodontic implants are available in this type. But then again, because it is an extensive surgical procedure and it is the patient has to be admitted for a longer period when this kind of implant is used, and it has to be done under general anesthesia. Is quite uncomfortable for the patient. That's the reason why this extensive procedure is avoided. Even prosthetic implants are usually not available under this category anymore. Most of orthodontic as well as prosthetic implants either come under picture A or picture B. Most orthodontic implants more frequently are under picture A, that is endosseous type. So, so to recollect all that we have learned today, we can classify orthodontic implants based on the kind of surgery performed as closed implants or open implants. We can classify them based on the number of layers of bone involved in the implant as endosseous, subperiosteal, or transosseous implants. Most orthodontic implants either come under endosteal or subperiosteal category, also called as on-plant category. The C classification is based on the design and the type of shape of the implant. Based on that, you can classify them as cylinder shape implants, blade type implants, or screw type implants. And most orthodontic implants that are used today are under screw type implants. The second most frequently that are used today are the cylinder type, and less often are the blade type of implants. The declassification is based on the bioscious integration and the coating of the surface of the implant. So they can be plasma coated or they can be without any plasma coating. Most orthodontic implants come under the without category. Now going back to the surgical procedure, most of the orthodontic implants that we use today, they are under the screw category and they are usually placed without any surgical exposure. In the sense, the procedure is done in an outpatient department, right on the dental chair. No general anesthesia, no admission is required, and it is a non-extensive procedure. So they come under the closed category. The screw type of implants, stat implants, come under the closed category without any surgical exposure. The orthodontic implant can be directly placed. Whereas the open implants are the implants that require a surgical exposure of the site. So usually examples would be the zygomatic implants. Now zygomatic implants are usually of the blade design type of implants. And what happens is the blade is engaged in the previous few slides you have already seen what's the shape of the blade implant. There's a body, and then there are holes to engage the implant in the zygomatic zygomatic process, and then some part of the implant is revealed into the oral cavity. Most of it is covered, whereas in case of a closed procedure orthodontic implant, the head of the implant is exposed, whereas in case of a open surgical procedure type of implant, although the surgical procedure is done and the site of placement of the blade implant is exposed, for example the zygomatic process, and the complete structure of the implant in that case will be closed. So that's the irony. Although the procedure is called open surgical procedure orthodontic implant for orthodontic implant, but the orthodontic implant at the end of the surgical procedure will not be seen. Whereas for closed implant, where the implant is placed without any surgical procedure, the entire implant will be, the head of the orthodontic implant will be revealed. Coming to the final classification, so this classification only is with respect to the screw type of orthodontic implants, also called as the closed type of orthodontic implants, wherein no surgical exposure is required. Earlier, the kind of orthodontic implant screw types that were used were usually pre-tapped implants. In the sense, first a surgical drill, a fine surgical drill was made into the site of placement. Then a tapping procedure was done with a different instrument, and into that the implant was placed. So they required tapping. They had to be pre-tapped before you place the implant. That's why they're called pre-tapped implants. And after that came the self-tapped implants. So these implants were special because you did not have to do a tapping procedure separately. All you had to do is you had to drill a fine hole into which you could directly place the implant. That's why they are called as self-tapped implants. You need not do a tapping procedure. So the flutes of the implants were sharp enough to create the taps or the threadings into the implant site. And what we do use today is usually self-drilling type. They are the implants which do not need tapping as well as drilling procedure, because the flutes of the implants are quite sharp and there is enough space that compresses the bone and passes through and through the bone. So these implants don't need any drilling procedure and they don't even need a tapping procedure. So that's the advantage of using a self-drilling implant. Usually for mandible, some amount of drilling may be required because mandible has a denser bone. So usually self-tapped and self-drilling implants are used for the mandible. But for maxilla, you can use self-drilling implants in most of the places because maxilla has lesser, denser bone and more of cancer. So that's for today. And in the coming session, we'll be learning on dimensions of orthodontic implants, that's the length and the width and the diameter of the implants, parts of orthodontic implants, and the importance of primary and secondary stability of the implants. That's it for today. If you like today's presentation, please like, please share, and please subscribe to my channel. If any faults, any corrections, any suggestions, please drop them in the comment sections below. Happy learning!